Abram Kielsmeyer Jones, and today's session is called Getting Started with Accordance. This is an hour or so of time where you can learn and also ask questions about how to get set up as a new or new-ish user in Accordance. This is geared especially toward folks who are new to the app. It may also be that you only use the app in a couple ways and have skipped over some of the basics and want to refresh yourself on that, and so that hopefully today would be good for you as well. We're going to cover setting up workspaces, customizing the toolbar. We're going to look at the search entry area. We'll do some basic searches and more. You can see I'm showing on my screen here a one-page outline that will cover our time together today. If you are here live, you'll find that in the GoToWebinar control panel. You should be able to click that open and get to the handout that way. If you're watching this on a recording afterwards, you can email me at abramkj@accordancebible.com, and I'd be happy to pass this on to you. And for those of you here live, yes, we are recording today, so you'll get an email. If you're here live, you'll get an email automatically that also has the handout, just as a redundancy, and a link to the recording. Probably the most important bookmark you could have is the help files. So I highlight that at the very beginning of this handout. There's a link here to the help files. That will take you to help files, and you can find what operating system you're on and what version of Accordance and get to the files accordingly. So I'm going to just open up a web browser in Accordance. I'm going to go to New Tab in Web Browser, and I'll just show you briefly what that URL looks like. You've got Accordance 14, Mac, Windows, Accordance Mobile, Accordance 13, tips, and frequently asked questions. So you can access lots and lots of information that way. You can also get to your help from the help menu in the Accordance app. So I want to highlight that just because that's what I use if I'm preparing on certain features of Accordance, preparing a webinar, and maybe I haven't used them in a while. I'll go to the help menu. If I'm doing my own personal study and don't know how to do a task, I'll go to the help menu or to the URL here. So I wanted to share that with you. All right, let's start by talking about setting up a workspace. Accordance fundamentally is a search-based app. It's not only that, but in terms of programming philosophy, the basic idea is that you are using the app to search a text, and more often than not, a biblical text, although as Accordance has expanded, there are lots of primary texts and primary texts that help folks to interpret and understand a biblical text. But Accordance, when you go to a new workspace, so I'm under the File menu and New Workspace, it will open, let me close this just so you can see from scratch, File, New Workspace. It will open up your default Bible text to the last place you were. And apparently, at some point, I changed my default Bible text to Hebrew. And I will show you how to change that. But maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe that's what you're always using Accordance to do. So every time you go to File, New Workspace, it will open up to your default Bible text. It will give you a search entry area right here, and it will allow you to search either basically by words or by verses. So I could either type in a Hebrew word and search it here, or I could go to, say, Genesis 12:1, and it would take me to that in the Hebrew text. So that's just the programming philosophy of Accordance, that the default move when you open a new workspace is to get to a Bible text, and it'll be called a search text. This is a tab with a search entry area. And again, that's because the programming philosophy of Accordance is that you are primarily using the app to search a primary text. And in this case, it's a Bible text. Now, it wouldn't have to be the Hebrew Bible as it is here. I will show you how to change your default search text. That is to say, whenever you open up a new search tab or a new workspace, you can have it open to another text. So let me just close this all together. I'm going to go to Settings on Windows. This is elsewhere. I believe it's under Edit, Preferences. And what I want here is search tab. And you'll notice here I'm set to the BHS for my default text. And I think I did that for a webinar recently. I can change it to anything. And all of my primary texts that are in my library are showing here. So it is biblical texts, it is extra biblical texts, it is different languages, it is things like the Gospel of Thomas, Josephus, you'll have the Latin Vulgate and so on. So whatever text I want to be my primary text, I set it here at the search tabs. Now, in some ways, this may feel, it kind of took me a while to catch on to this language that it was in the search tabs. In other words, I might first think as a new user, go to general or somewhere up top to change my default Bible text. But Accordance, again, it's back to that programming philosophy. It is fundamentally built around searching and searching a primary text, so it's under search tabs. And this just means this is your default Bible text. Now, of course, that's not the only way people use Accordance. You might be opening Accordance to read a secondary source, a commentary or a monograph or something that's not the Bible, or maybe not even really related to the Bible per se. You can do that too. But in terms of programming, this is what you get. Search tabs, pick your text. Now notice if I go down here and choose the Net Bible, New English Translation, and now if I go to File, New Workspace, it's going to open a new search tab to that Bible. And you'll notice the background is different, the font is different, and that's to do with the settings of the text, and we'll go over that in just a moment. So that's how you set up a default Bible text, and then anytime you go to New Workspace, it will open up that text. The next, probably most, I guess, important step that I would want to share, or probably the step I'm most likely to do in all kinds of study, is to open up a parallel pane. Unless I'm reading straight through the text in one module, which I may be, maybe I'm reading through the Hebrew, but even then, I often like to have multiple translations or multiple versions open. So the Add Parallel pane will allow you to open up another text in parallel. And the place you get that is under Add Parallel and Texts. So again, just to start over, File, New Workspace, that's going to open up my default search text, whatever Bible I want to see first when I open up a new workspace. So here's the NET, and now I go to Add Parallel and I can add anything. So my personal approach, and this is not in the help files anywhere, but what I do is I pick what I would consider a good enough default text. I don't use the same first text for every kind of study I do in Accordance. I'm just doing too much different stuff, whether it's leading a class or preparing a sermon or personal study or reading Hebrew or reading Greek. So I just have a text, and for me, it's an English text that has both Old and New Testaments. This NET Bible, more often than not, is my default search tab. So you might just think about what's the one you're going to use the most, but then you can change it as much as you want to in the search tabs. But I don't think too much about the default because I know that I can go right to this Add Parallel pane and open up any text. So you'll see the same menu of texts here that you saw when we went to the search tab to change the text. So maybe I want to open up the JPS translation. I can add another parallel, and you can do this as often as you want and for as many texts as will fit on your screen. We did a session a couple weeks ago on workspaces. If you go to help and webinars, we actually went a lot further with this parallel pane business. But that is, and you'll notice here in Accordance, it's almost like it's kind of highlighted with an accent color here. And that's because out of all of these buttons, and we'll have the toolbar open in a moment, but that's just one that gets used so often. Accordance wants to make sure that's nice and visible. So you could add as many parallel panes as you wanted to. Right here will be your most recently opened modules. So you can still go to text and find the full list, but your most recently opened modules will be here. And now I've got a good workspace for reading through the text of Genesis in 2 languages, and in the English translation, I've got 3 different translations. So that's add parallel. Now, another great feature that's kind of built in here, and so far in terms of features or technique, we haven't done very much, but Accordance, the way that it develops its modules, it's got this cross-highlighting feature. So I'll take this word earth, for example. Where you see the blue circle, that's where my cursor is. That blue circle is a presentation tool. That's not part of Accordance, but that blue circle is where my cursor is. So I'm just hovering over. I'm not clicking it. I'm just, in fact, my hands are totally off the laptop right now, but it's on the word earth. Now, without my doing anything, I'm not clicking, I'm not selecting, I'm literally just hovering and leaving it there. Accordance is doing two different things. One is it's cross-highlighting that word across my different parallel panes. So however few or however many I had opened, Accordance grabs them and highlights them. Not a permanent highlight, it won't stay there. If I move this off, nothing's highlighted. So it's like a temporary highlight, but I'm hovering over earth. My cursor is there in the NET. And if you look to the right, I'm going to leave my cursor where it is, but if you move your eyes to the right to the JPS, earth is highlighted. If you move your eyes to the right again to the NIV, earth is highlighted. And if you move again to the right, the BHS, Aretz, the Haaretz, and the earth, that's highlighted. And that's to show you, here's the corresponding word in Hebrew. Here's how other translations translate it. And this happens instantaneously. So I hover over darkness and I see the same thing. Not a lot of variety in these translations. We can see what the Hebrew word is. Here's surface, here's light. Some of these words are going to be pretty similar, others maybe not. You might get some variation here and there, but you can see on a case-by-case basis. Here, for example, in the NIV, God is saying, let there be a vault. In the NET and the JPS, it's expanse. You'll probably need to adjust your Hebrew font so that fits in the screen here. And let's see what that Hebrew word is. We've got to adjust this down more. Here we go. All right, so we've got rakia in Hebrew. So that cross highlighting, it's just instantaneous, and I'm not clicking on anything, I'm not selecting, I'm just letting my cursor rest on a single word. So any other parallel pane you open, it will do that. Now it works, it's multi-directional, so you don't have to start from your default search text, the NET. You can start from the JPS, you can start from the NIV, you start from the Hebrew, and it will cross-highlight. That's one thing I want to show about these parallel versions. The other thing is what's going on in the instant details. Oops, this is the instant details pane. So when I hover over earth, again, I'm just leaving my cursor there. In the instant details, if you look down, I'm actually going to hold the shift key to keep the instant details frozen. Holding shift kind of freezes them, so I'm holding shift. You can see in the instant details, you've got Aretz, and you've got some information about it, some parsing information. So hovering over a word does those two things. Number one, it cross-highlights it in any translation that is so programmed to do, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And it shows you information in the instant details. So there's a little bit of redundancy here in my current setup, which is I can see the Hebrew word for earth in two places. I can see it in the instant details, Aretz, and I can see it, that's the lexical form, and I can see Aretz, the text form in the BHS. Now, if I close the BHS, I can still see the Hebrew down at the bottom. So the instant details will show you the underlying Hebrew or Greek if we were in a New Testament text, regardless of if you have that particular text open or not. So the add parallel button is a powerful one because it does this cross highlighting at the word level, and I've talked about instant details too. Let me just make a note here and then I'll pause for questions. You're seeing the cross highlighting happening here. In some translations it will not. So if I go to, for example, let's take the CSB. No, let's take the Common English Bible. And that is, just go look at about this text, copyright 2011. All right, the cross highlighting is not happening here. Conspicuously absent, where my blue circle, where my cursor is over Earth in the NIV, it cross highlights in the JPS and the NET. If I do it from JPS, I get it in panes 1 and 3, and if I do it in the NET, I get it in panes 2 and 3. Conspicuously absent is this Earth over here. That's not cross highlighting. That is not a bug. That has to do with how the module is created. And so the way to know is if your module name has Strong's in it, NET with Strong's, or it might be abbreviated with S. So JPSS, Jewish Publication Society Tanakh, with Strong's. In this case, the NIV has Goodrich Kohlenberger. That's just another numbering system. But the Common English Bible doesn't have Strong's. And you can see this in your list. Even before you open up a parallel pane, you can see which ones you might expect to have this cross highlighting. So HCSB with Strong's, will that have cross highlighting? Yes, because it says with Strong's. So that means that Accordance has tagged the Strong's numbers to the word, which is what makes this cross highlighting happen. And here, as expected, it's working. If I open up Add Parallel Texts and go to LBLA Spanish, will that have cross highlighting? No, because there's no Strong's number or GK number. So you're likely to get a workspace that looks something like this, where I'm hovering over a word in my default text and I'm seeing it cross highlighted in some, but not all panes. Now, if that bothers you, you can just say, I'm only going to open versions that have Strong's numbers or Goodrich Kohlenberger numbers, which again, you can see in the name of the text, because it will either say with Strong's, or in the case of the NIV, Goodrich Kohlenberger numbers. And if it doesn't have it, you can still have it open in parallel. It just won't do that cross highlighting feature. So this is already a pretty involved workspace. I'm going to go ahead and close these, but if you want to see more about how to set up a workspace like this in terms of reading, if you go to Help and Webinars, we recorded this just from a couple weeks ago, the very top one here, Western Hemisphere webinars, you'll see, I think it's called Working with Workspaces. And so it will be right there. You'll find that there if you want to get more into these parallel panes and different tabs, and you can, even just what little bit we've looked at today, you can build a pretty robust workspace. So that's how you get to your default Bible text. That's the Add Parallel button. That's cross highlighting. That's instant details. We'll talk about the library in just a moment, but let me check in with you and see what questions you have. Here's a question. Somebody says, hi, the highlighting is not working in my parallels. Can you explain how to make it work, please? Yeah, and that question came in a little while ago. So I hope that what I've just said with the Strong's numbers addresses it, but if it doesn't, please let me know in the questions box again and I can come back. In other words, if you're seeing text with Strong's and GK numbers and it's not cross highlighting, let me know. But I don't think there's any, actually you can turn, let's see what happens when we turn that off. So you can actually turn that off. So that would be the other possibility. I've literally never turned that off ever until right now, because I just find it so useful, but you can. So just make sure it's under instant details, make sure cross highlighting is checked. And then if that's checked and you still don't see it, it should be because you have a text that doesn't have key numbers. But if it's more than that, please let me know. Right, yes, here's a good clarification. Someone says NET has Strong's, yet it's not called NETS because that is another translation, and that's to avoid confusion. So by Accordance's own naming convention, like the ESV, you've got just a regular ESV and then ESVS, that's ESV with Strong. So with the NET Bible, you would expect NETS, but that is already taken by another translation. So it's you won't see it in the abbreviation here, it just says NET. But where you will see it is in the Add Parallel pane. under text. So you can say, all right, do I have the NET Bible? Yes, I do. Does it have Strong's? Yes, it does. And that's actually one reason I use it for a default text, because I know the cross highlighting will happen. Also, it has lots of great translation footnotes, but we've seen how to change the default text if we want. All right, any other questions about setting up a workspace? And if you do, I'll come back to that. Let's look at the library briefly. Again, we've got a webinar where we spent a whole hour on that. So if this is your jam, we have you covered under help webinars, a whole hour on organizing the library. But I do, because we're going to move to the toolbar now, I just want to kind of make our way around the parts of the workspace. This right here is nothing, as you can see. It says workspace up here. I can change that name by saving this workspace, but nothing is showing. What we want now for both the library, and we're going to move into the toolbar, we want the window menu up at the top. So we can have this workspace look stripped down. I mean, this is so stripped down that it's useless, but if I go to File, New Workspace, when it was stripped down like that, I've got no toolbar, no library. I've got the instant details showing, but you can add the library to your workspace. In fact, let's go from a blank. You can add the library. You can take out the instant details, add them back in, and you can open up the toolbar, which goes there. So now your default text goes here. Let's just open it here from the library. So I could go to File and New Workspace and get to my default text, but here's another way to open a text. Maybe you just say, all right, I want to open up an NIV. The 2011 is the most recent one. And so I'm going to double click that, or you can select it and hit Enter or Return, and it will open that way. And now I've got a busier looking workspace, and you may not want it to look this way. I mean, this is a little bit busy if I'm going to be reading a lot of text, but this also allows you to access both your resources at left and your features up at the top pretty quickly and in a way that's visually very easy. You can get pretty much all that stuff through the menus, but you have to click through them, or you could just type into help. You could type whatever it is you want to do, and it will search all those menus. That's true in any app, by the way. That's not just Accordance. But here's the library, and just to spend a moment on it, it's got all your recently opened texts up at the top. So if I wanted to be back in the NET, I could do that. It's got your full list of texts here. And as you scroll down, it will have your tools organized by category. And this category organization, you can play with this and adjust it, but this is the default one that comes when you organize your library, get it set up through Accordance. And you can see everything there. You can browse through this just like you would a library with different sections going through the stacks. But you can also search anything in your library. And this is what I use more often than not. So for example, let's say I've got my NET Bible. I want to open up the JPS Torah commentary. I'm just going to start typing in my library pane here. Now I could have gone to this plus button to open it in a new tab. I could have gone to add parallel and opened it up from reference tools and commentaries. I can also go to library and type in JPS Torah commentary and open it that way. So the library is a really quick way in and out of all your resources, and then you can arrange them how you want. That's opening it as a different tab, but you could open it as a parallel pane. We talked about that more in the workspace webinar from a couple weeks ago, so I'll just refer you back to that. But that's the library pane. So now we've got, I mean, you can kind of think about this as a giant C encompassing the text. So at the top is the toolbar, at the left is the library, at the bottom is the instant details, although you could make it so that your instant details are like this, and you can have them side by side. That's just personal preference, what you want to see. But let's move to this toolbar now. That's the second main point here, customizing the toolbar. If I right click on this, one thing I want to think about is, do I want to see icon and text? Do I want to see icon only? I've been using Accordance a pretty long time, and I still take a minute or two to figure out where all these icons are. So I don't do icon only. However, if you do, you can hover over them and it will tell you what they are. I'm not clicking them, I'm just hovering over. So for example, this is the instant details. Notice how it's orange, that's my accent color. That's because it's showing. I can toggle it open and closed with that instant details button. But let's say that's just too much. Let's go to icon and text. All right, there's instant details. Let's say you don't like visuals, you can do text only. That's kind of busy to me. I do icon and text, but it's up to you. This is one of many preferences that Accordance wants you to be able to customize. So now I can see instant details, close that, open that, and I can get to all kinds of different features instant details, same thing. You can get to your user notes, your user tools, all kinds of other features there. So there's more that we could go through there. Of course, that's there's a whole lot here in the toolbar. But the other thing I wanted to show you is that you can customize it. So let's say you don't ever use user notes and user tools in Accordance, just for example. You can take those and on a Mac anyway, I'm just pulling it out and that erases it. Now, let's say I realize I made a grave mistake. I actually use user notes every day and I want those. Well, you can also, as it says here, drag your favorite items into the toolbar, click, hold, drag, and then you'll see a plus, a green plus. That means you can drop it there. And you can customize it with spaces and all kinds of things. So just think about what you want here. This too, I mean, here's a quick, really, I mean, this is, you can get to help this way. But there's the help tab right here. Characters, I do usually keep that in my toolbar just because when I'm typing Greek and Hebrew or doing word searches, I like to have that. But all of these, I could have gone to characters via the window menu. So it's, again, it's really just what's easiest for you, what's quickest for you. So my encouragement to you, especially as you have been using Accordance for a little while, figure out what you're making the most use of and put that in your toolbar and get rid of the other stuff. If you're never opening workspaces from here, or if you never use the web browser in Accordance, maybe you didn't know there was a web browser in Accordance, drag it out of there and clean this up and put dividers in. I mean, you can really make it look more streamlined if you want. Or if you don't want to think about that, and even just the last 10 minutes have given you decision fatigue, you can do this, drag the default set into the toolbar. So if you've already tinkered with this and you kind of feel like you've, I don't know, maybe messed it up or it's not what you want, you can just drag this whole thing up into the toolbar and it will basically reset it. And of course, you can hide that altogether. There's no reason, I mean, you don't have to have that open. All that stuff is accessible through other ways. So that is the toolbar. I'd be happy to answer questions that you've got about that. I don't know if it would be too boring to do a whole hour on the toolbar, but there's that much there that you could spend an hour on it. I don't know that we've done a full webinar on the toolbar, but that's just an overview. If you've got questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, we'll just pause for a moment, kind of take a beat, and then we'll move on to the search window. All right, well, let's say you've got your workspace just how you want it. You've got your default text open. Maybe you have a parallel open, maybe not, but let's just open one. Maybe you've got your library open, but maybe you've accessed everything you need, so you close it. We don't have our instant details open, so let's do that from the toolbar. And now let's say, well done, toolbar, and thank you and goodbye. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is move into searching. This is the search entry area. I mentioned at the beginning that Accordance is built with this programming philosophy of searching the text. Again, you can browse any text, biblical or not, but searching the text here is what we're going to do now. So in the NET Bible, we've got verses that we can search by and words. Those are the two major ways of searching. You'll see more options here like flex and headings. Headings is just searching the actual Bible headings. But I want to talk just a little bit about what's here, and we'll do a search or two just to kind of get you started, and then I've got a place to point you for that. But know that really the two fundamental ways to search a text in accordance are either by verse, so you want to look up a particular verse, or by word or phrase, so you're looking for something in the text. Flex is just a different way of searching words, and then headings is headings. This is going to vary a little bit from text to text. Not every text has the headings in it. Both of these do. So we can expect that if we open up a brand new search tab to HCSB and look at the search entry area there, that's going to have headings. It looks exactly the same as the NET. If we open up the BHS, and I'm just going to plus here to get a new tab, same workspace, the BHS does not have headings. So that, and it's a different language, so it's even a little bit different, letters and words. And that has to do with some of the intricacies of Hebrew and the pronouns, the pronominal suffixes and the prefixes and things like that. So you'll get a different search field set of options from this search token here. But by and large, you're either going to be searching words / phrases or verses, depending on what the text is. If I open up a Greek text, let's just look at that, and then we'll try a couple sample searches. Here's the Greek New Testament. Here I've just got verses and words. And there's no letters search there, because unlike Hebrew, the prefixes, it's all one word. You know, if you ask the question, what counts as a word in Hebrew, you'll get a bunch of different answers, depending on if you count the prefixed prepositions as words or not. And if that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. And if it does, and you're interested in more, we've done full search webinars on the Hebrew text that are interesting to watch. All right, so that's your only decision when you've got a search text open is, do I want to search by verses or search by word? And so if I'm in, for example, the NET Bible, with my parallel pane, I can say, all right, well, let's look at, I'm preaching through the Sermon on the Mount right now. So let's go to Matthew 5, verse 14, no, 17 is what I'm on this week. So just type it in and there I am. You can type in more than just that. You could do, maybe you want to see all, I'm just making up examples here, but let's say you want to see all the 3:16 verses in the Gospels. So you could do Matthew 3:16, comma, Mark 3:16, of course, realizing that the Gospel writers did not do versification, that came much later, so it's not like we're building any conclusions off of this, but maybe we're curious. Maybe you're reading a book in a PDF and there's a lengthy reference list. You can just copy and paste it in there and run a full search string. So it's one way to search by verses, but it's much more than just looking it up. Like with the print Bible, you can just go to one part at a time. Well, I guess you can do more than one if you put a finger or a bookmark in there, but you're really just opening and looking at one part of the text at a time, whereas here you can do that and you can search multiple references. So that's the verses search, and it's pretty versatile. If you go again to the webinars page, I won't keep belaboring this, but just so that you know it's there, I did a whole multiple part series on searching where we went into more detail. It's under the Western Hemisphere here. And let me just put this direct link in the chat box. So if you're here live, you'll have access to this. That will take you right here. But we did a whole session on searching in accordance. You might need to scroll down a little bit to find it, but it's there. And one of the things we talked about was how some of the creative searches you can do in terms of verse searching. So there's a lot of that there. And then there's word searching, and that might be something that we do right away. Like, oh, I want to go look up the word, I don't know, whatever it is in the Bible. Let's take the word, let's take a nice easy word like sanctification. Sanctification. All right, so there it is. 4 times, all of 4 times in the NET. And it shows it in bold and red. And in this case, because I have a parallel pane open, it searched those verses too and pulled them up in parallel, which is really nice. And because maybe the reason I had this open in parallel was I wanted to compare. So whether I do or not, I can do that. And now this is where the cross highlighting comes in handy again. It's not pulling up the results in the HCSB because it's possible that it doesn't have the word sanctification there. So it can only search one search text for the word at a time. Now, in this case, it's sanctification in all 4 instances, but it's searching the search text, the NET Bible, for sanctification. And then if you have a parallel pane open, it's giving you those verses. You could do maybe a phrase like God is love. God is love, and that occurs in 2 verses as the phrase God is love. Maybe you want God and love together in the same verse. This did not work under words because it treated it as a literal phrase, but I can search it with flex search. That's what that other search was there, and that's going to give me God and love together in the same verse. Accordance gets really sophisticated here, and there's a lot of fun searches you can do. So I'll just again say that if you want to go further with this, we did a big series on that, and other instructors have done it as well. If you want to learn from someone else too, all that stuff is recorded. So that's the search window, and I'll just note the go-to box down at the bottom here is just another way. Having run the search, for example, you can skip ahead to particular books that have positive results in that search. So what I'm seeing here is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy have verses with the word God and the word love in them. Numbers does not. Now, I'm not going to draw any conclusions from that. It's just raw data at this point, but you can skip ahead very quickly using the go-to box without changing what's in the search entry area. In other words, you have this search God is love run, and you've just seen, well, I can skip ahead to John with verses, but if I do that, I lose my search. Well, that's why Accordance built the go-to box. I can keep the search God love and go right to the Gospel of John and see God and love together in multiple verses. Any questions or comments about the search window? I know there's so much more there, but I'd welcome any comments or questions. And while you think about that, we'll move on to settings and preferences, although we've kind of covered much of that, but we'll go just a little bit further in that in just a moment. All right, let's talk more about settings and preferences. We talked already about setting the default Bible text. That, again, I'm going to close all this, by the way. That is under settings or preferences on Windows. Search tabs is where you would change that. With that search tab, you can also change what it looks like. So if I go to File, New Workspace, this looks a little bland to me. And if I'm reading for, and maybe bland is good, maybe that's what you want. But if I'm reading for a long time, personally, I want a different background other than white. And Accordance is not going to dictate that for you, but it is going to let you choose. So this gear icon right here at the top right, there's an option called Set Text Pane Display, and that's worth spending some time with. We'll do just a little bit right now. But there are preloaded themes, and you can see them previewed down here. So you could just spend some time trying that out. That's basically saving you time with changing font and background and the actual typeface and things like that. You can change all of that, but maybe you find something here you like, this readability theme. Maybe you like night sky. So just either find something there or go to custom, and then here you can click on customize theme, which opens up a little bit of a bigger window here, and you can change the font and you can change the font size. Of course, the font I click on OK, and now I've got a much nicer, in my opinion, background, one that's maybe more legible. So I am going to keep that like that, and maybe expand the font here. And maybe that font isn't quite doing it for me, so I go back to set text pane display. Remember, customized theme will show that, and maybe I change that to, I don't know, let's go to Georgia, see what that looks like. I've got a nice serif font there. All right, so there we go. So now I've got my text, and let's say, and maybe you spend 10 more minutes on this than we're doing right now. We'll move on from this, but let's say you have it just how you want it. What you want to make sure to do under set text pane display is go to use as default. If I don't click that, and I'm going to just leave this here and go to a new tab. If I don't click that, the next time I open the same text, it's going to look just like it did before, but that's maybe not what I want. So I'm going to close that, go back to set text pane display. Once I've taken all the time to do this, and there's even, there's more that you can do here. But once I've taken the time to do that, I'm going to go to use as default. And it's going to say, are you sure that you want to save this as the default? Yes. All right, so click out of that. Now, when I open up a new NET tab, a new Net Bible, it looks like that, exactly how it looks over here. So it has saved those preferences. So that's, it was an embarrassingly high number of times that I got frustrated with my preferences not sticking early on when I was using Accordance, before I realized that you had to save it to use it as a default, because I would change it and then it wouldn't preserve the changes, and I would wonder why. And it's this button right here, use as default. So whenever you get something you like, just click it with use as default. The nice thing about that is that you could say that you want to change how it looks here, but not actually change your default. So Accordance gives you some flexibility there. All right, let's talk just a little bit more about word searches. We've gone through a lot of this already, but instant details we looked at. Let's look at triple click. Triple click is a pretty basic feature in Accordance that I don't know that I've seen. There maybe was one other app at some point 10 years ago that I saw that used a triple click, but a lot of what's in Accordance exists in other apps, such as these so-called tool tips, like when I have the toolbar showing, and if it's icon only and I hover over it, I get a little note on what that thing does. That's not just the toolbar, by the way. If I don't know what this gear icon is, I can hover over it and it will say perform tasks on this pane. That's called a tooltip, and it's not unique to Accordance. You'll find that in a lot of other apps. Same thing with searching the help menus. Maybe you want to find your character palette. Type in characters and it will show you where it is in the menu and take you there. Other apps do that too. But where Accordance is pretty unique, is with the triple click. So if you've got a default text open and you triple click on any word, what it will do is take you to your default lexicon, which you can change under your settings and amplify. So we'll just go there first, settings, amplify, and there's a whole section called triple click defaults. So I can, when I triple click from an English word, I can go to an Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary, Greek to BDAG, Hebrew to Halot, Latin to the Latin Dictionary, and so on. And you can change all of these. So let's, pick your favorite Greek and Hebrew lexicon, your favorite English resource. And there are more settings here. We can go into those if you're interested, but let me just show you how this works. If I've got a Greek text open, and maybe I'm reading John 3:16, and I want to see this word agapesein, from agapao, to love. I want to see, I know what that means, and maybe even if I don't know Greek, I've heard agape before, but maybe I want to see a full-on dictionary definition. So I simply triple click 1, 2, 3, and that takes me to my default triple click lexicon, which I selected as BDAG, Bauer, Donker, Arndt, Gingrich, and it took me to agapao. It took me right to the word not the word that's in the text, because that's an inflected form. So this is the dictionary form. This is the third person singular because it's talking about ha theos, God loved. But it takes me to agapao, and I can see a nice long definition here with lots of cross references. I could go to another word, ha pisteuon, the one who believes in him. Triple click that. It's going to take me to pisteuo. And in cases where your lexicon has the reference, you can select so that it includes that too. And you can do this very quickly. This is as quick as the instant details. I'm triple clicking 1, 2, 3 on any given word, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's taking me right to that word in my default lexicon. That's happening from Greek. It happens similarly from English, Hebrew. You can set your triple click default to be whatever you want it to, and then of course you can get in and out of your other lexicons pretty quickly. But that was a new to me feature in computing in general when I came to Accordance, because I'd never seen the triple click. And it does take some getting used to. It might feel a little fussy. You can even, I think there's I thought there was a place to change. So just something like 1, 2, 3. If you go too slow, 1, 2, 3, it won't get it. So 1, 2, 3, and that takes you to your default lexicon. Let's look at Hebrew just briefly, and then we'll move on. So here's the word Adonai or Yahweh, triple click, and it knows that I have Halot selected for Hebrew, so it takes me there. Let's do triple click for a word in the NET Bible with Strong's. Now, maybe unexpectedly, it did not, and I'll explain why this is, it did not take me to my English Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary, and I did triple click from an English translation. But because this is a key number text, it's got Strong's numbers, it is actually doing something kind of cool. My triple click in this case, and you can change all this in the settings, but my triple click in this case is taking me to the underlying Hebrew word. In fact, one reason I like the NET is because it's got Old and New Testaments. So if I'm just reading through that Bible, I'm going to be able to triple click into my Greek and Hebrew from the English. So for instance, God created. What's the Hebrew word for created? Well, I can see it in the instant details as we've done, but I can also triple click 1, 2, 3. There it is in Hebrew. Let's jump ahead to John 3:16. We were just looking at God loved. What's the Greek word for loved? Well, I can see it in the instant details down at the bottom there. I can also triple click 1, 2, 3 and get into my Greek lexicon from my English. So that is, I think, very cool, and I use that frequently to the point where I take it for granted. But know that under your settings or preferences in Windows, under Amplify, you can change what's going on there. All right, I would welcome any questions or comments you've got as we're running out of time. This is, you know, my goal with this particular webinar is less to get through the handout and more to make sure there's plenty of time for you to ask questions you have, especially since I've pitched this toward newer users. You know, there's all kinds of things to learn with Accordance. So you may have a particular issue that we haven't addressed today, and I'd love to know about it. So we'll leave plenty of time for questions and comments. As we do that, let me just highlight a couple of other things on word searches, and I'll keep an eye on the questions box and prioritize your questions. There are other options like live click, lookup, research. I'll just show you live click, and we'll leave this other stuff for another time. But the live click option is kind of like if you triple clicked into all of your lexicons all at once. And this live click is going to work with just a single click. So I'm going to single click on, actually I need to make sure I've got the settings right. So note that when I check live click, I get a gear icon. You can, there are 3 kinds of live click. I'm just going to do lexicon lookup for right now. Click OK. All right, so now when I click on loved in English, I get agapao, but if I triple click, I got it in my default Greek lexicon. Now I'm single clicking, live clicking, Accordance calls it, and I'm getting it in all of my Greek lexicons from the English text. If I were in a Greek text and I had clicked on the word, I would get exactly the same thing as long as I had live click turned on. It's exactly the same search, whether you do it from English or Greek or English or Hebrew. But that live click is pretty powerful. In fact, you may not use triple click ever if you always want to look up the word in all of your lexicons. I like triple click because if I'm reading through John 3 and I want to kind of, or maybe I'm reading John 1 through 3 in a day, and I know that I'm not going to be able to do a detailed word study on every word. I might just triple click and see it in one lexicon. But if I really want to go deep, I can live click and see it in all of my lexicons. Live click also allows you to do a verse lookup, which is kind of like lexicon lookup, but for verses, John 3:16 in all my translations. Yeah, I could have opened up Parallel Pane and fit as much as I wanted to, but I can also live click and see it in all of my text, not just translations. All of my texts that have John 3:16 will show there. All right, I'm going to stop there. I know that's a lot of information. If you've been using Accordance for a long time, this might be just the right amount of information that you can absorb. If you're new to Accordance, it could be a lot. I remember my early days using Accordance. It was a pretty steep learning curve. I loved it, which is one reason I'm still here. But it is admittedly a lot to learn, maybe even more than your majority of apps in terms of the learning curve. And part of that is just because it's really powerful. It is not an e-reader, although you can use it as an e-reader, but the more you get to know it, the more you realize it is just a very complex and sophisticated piece of software. Here are some resources at the last part of your handout that I recommend. This is just along the lines of getting started. I've linked to all of this in the handout. So there's a pocket dictionary of theological terms. I've linked to a couple of Bible dictionaries, commentary, and I also make pretty frequent use of this Bible outlines tool, which is more or less, you could think of it as the passage headings, but all stripped out. And it runs in tandem with your Bible text if you set it up to do that. So that's a really good tool that I like to use as well. And other ones there too, you can follow those links. My email is abramkj@accordancebible.com if you want to get in touch with any questions. I'm going to wrap up the recording in just a moment and stay on live a little longer, but let me just check in one more time to see if there are any questions or comments you've got on anything we looked at or anything we didn't look at, anything you came that you were curious about that we haven't covered. I especially would love to pay attention to that. All right, if you're watching on the recording, thanks so much. Again, abramkj@accordancebible.com for the handout or to otherwise get in touch.